Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the 4 parks of Universal Orlando Resort, featuring the new Universal Epic Universe. With spectacular hotels, we offer a week of vacation excitement. Visit universalorlando.com.
Military murder is an independent project and is not endorsed by the Department of Defense or any military component. The views expressed are those of the host. The content of this podcast is not meant to be legal or medical advice. Warning, this episode contains graphic details of murder and is not suitable for young listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back, True Crime Army. I am your host, Margot, and this is Military Murder, a show where I focus on crimes committed by military members and veterans. But don't worry, you don't have to know anything about the military to listen, I promise. You just have to be a true crime enthusiast, and if that's you, welcome home. All right, everyone, this is my first show after CrimeCon Orlando, and I wanted to thank everyone who stopped by my booth to say hi, and other people who just stopped by to learn more about the show and why I do what I do. Before I begin today, I wanted to make you aware that in the last few weeks, I did a few podcast appearances on 2 shows. And if you're interested in taking a listen to those episodes, I'm going to be linking them in the show notes. First, I was on the Asking Why podcast with Clint Davis. Clint is a veteran turned therapist, and on his show, I discuss the podcast, my why, a little bit about my military background, and overall my faith in God, and how both my faith and therapy helped me get through some tough times, especially in this last season. The other show I was on was Bruh, It's a Murder, where I joined Andre, another veteran, to continue to shed light on the mysterious death of Denisha Montgomery. I brought you Denisha's story many months ago, and her sister Brooke is still looking for answers. Check out that episode of Bruh, It's a Murder, and let's continue to share Denisha's story. All right, today's story takes us all the way to the West Coast. It starts with a morbid discovery in Joshua Tree National Park and leads back to a military officer. This is not the story of Aaron Corbin. Many of you have asked me to cover Aaron's case, and I have already covered it in a mini episode in my Patreon. So if you're interested in hearing Aaron's story, please check it out at patreon.com/militarymurder and look at the bootcamp level. And this is a good time to plug my Patreon again. If you want more content, there are dozens of extra episodes on my Patreon and Apple Premium subscription. And just as an FYI, kind of an update, for those of you who listen on Spotify, Patreon has joined forces with Spotify so that you can listen to Patreon episodes on Spotify, just like my Apple listeners are able to listen to bonus content on Apple. All right. Join me today as I tell you the story of Henry Stange. Now, let's dig in. If I'm being completely truthful, I had never heard about Joshua Tree National Park until I started this podcast. Apparently, it's located in the Marines' backyard, at least those stationed at Twentynine Palms. But Joshua Tree National Park is a beautiful desert where outdoorsy people go to do, outdoorsy things. When I looked it up, it's where 2 deserts meet, the Mojave Desert and the Colorado Desert. Heck, there's even a podcast about this called Where 2 Deserts Meet. Anyway, it's at the Joshua Tree National Park on June 1st, 2018, where a hiker spotted a flock of vultures circling an area. The hiker was amused by the vultures and figured they were circling an area where an animal lay dead. So the man snapped a picture of the vultures and snapped a picture of the dirt under the vultures, and he went about his day. The following morning, the man shared the Joshua Tree pictures with his wife, and he told her the story about the vultures. He showed his wife the pics and was like, "That's pretty cool, right?" The wife, probably an investigation discovery addict like the rest of us, stared at the picture and she was like, "Are you sure that was a dead animal?" As she stared harder, she swore it looked like a body part. The man was like, no way. Could it be? Feeling uneasy after talking to his wife, the man called the Joshua Tree Park Rangers and explained what he had seen the day before. He was able to give the park ranger a specific location as well as the picture. The park ranger went out to the location, and it wasn't hard to spot because the vultures were still there 24 hours later. As the park ranger got closer, he scared a coyote away. Initially, the park ranger thought it was probably nothing, but when he saw the vultures and the coyote during daylight hours, he got weary. As he got closer, he immediately knew this was not a dead animal. This was a dead body. He couldn't see the full body, but it appeared that the partial body of a man had been unearthed. The ranger immediately called the sheriff's office. When the sheriff's department arrived on scene, they discovered the body of a grown adult man. It was evident he had been murdered elsewhere and dumped at this particular location. There was no signs of a struggle nearby, no blood, nothing. Just a body haphazardly dug in a 2-by-2 foot grave. But the man clearly had been laying dead in the desert for at least 2 weeks. The man did not have any form of identification on his person, but at autopsy, they were able to obtain fingerprints and run them against prints in the DMV. And when they did, they got a hit. The victim was 54-year-old Henry Allen Stange. He was from Murrieta, California. Authorities immediately went to Henry's home to 1, informed his loved ones, and 2, try to figure out what the hell happened to Henry. But when they showed up at the house, no one answered. Once they were able to make entry into the home, the interior of the home appeared normal, pristine. Nothing seemed out of place. No forced entry, nothing. But then, as investigators made their way to the garage, they discovered what they had been looking for: the crime scene. There was blood and a horrible attempt at a cleanup just laying right there. Henry was a ham radio operator, a hobbyist, if you will, and he had this setup of this radio thing in his garage along with a boat and other garage items. For those of you who wondered what a ham radio is, like me, it's a communication tool that allows people to talk without internet or cell phone. And really, that's all I know about that. So anyway, they find blood all over the floor in the garage. And when I watched an episode of On the Case with Paula Zahn on this case, they showed pictures. And listen, whoever tried to clean up did an absolutely terrible job because there was so much blood everywhere. As detectives took inventory of the scene, it was clear that whoever did this tried to clean it up, not only because of the smears left absolutely everywhere, but the smell of bleach was overwhelming. Authorities were hopeful, though, that whoever did this, well, maybe they left behind a fingerprint, a footprint, or better yet, their very own blood DNA. That hope, however, was shattered when nothing at the crime scene developed any suspects.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Henry's autopsy revealed that he had suffered at least one blunt force trauma injury to the head. He had multiple fractures and sharp force injuries to the side of his neck, at least 2 inches deep. On the back of his head, he suffered from chop-type injuries. Because of the level of decomposition, it was hard to say what type of weapon or weapons had been used, but the medical examiner determined that some of Henry's injuries were obtained from being stomped on. Henry lived alone. When authorities reached out to his mother, Caroline Doherty, she was horrified. But then it all started to make sense. She had been trying to reach her son Henry since May 24th and had never heard back from him. Now she knew why. Henry had two sisters, Diana and Judy. When Henry's mom and sisters were asked about Henry, investigators learned a few things that led them in a lot of different directions when it came to the investigation. For starters, Henry was in the process of a divorce. He and his wife had small children, and well, things got contentious at times. Second, authorities learned that Henry suffered a handicap after he was hit by a drunk driver. Henry had been riding his motorcycle one day and had been stopped in front of a house when a drunk driver plowed into him and dragged him on for 2 blocks. His leg was badly damaged and he couldn't walk without assistance. Due to his injury, he was in constant pain. He was on all types of painkillers and he couldn't hold down a regular job. Well, when this happened, he got really into this ham radio stuff, and Henry was described as the Howard Stern of ham radio. Some people loved him, but many people, and I mean many people, also hated the guy. Without much else to do, Henry was on the radio airwaves regularly, like every single day. But after May 24th, no one heard from Henry ever again. Henry's family and friends had shared with investigators that someone in the ham radio community had attacked Henry months earlier in January. Well, this is what happened. Henry had shared with his family that someone broke into his house and attacked him with a hammer. He didn't get a good look at the person, but he was sure the person tried to kill him. The crazy thing is that Henry never reported this incident to authorities, but even scarier, Henry shared with his loved ones that he was pretty sure that whoever attacked him in January would come back to finish the job. And sadly, Henry would be right. After the January attack, Henry installed surveillance cameras all over his house and in the garage, but conveniently missing from the crime scene and the entire house were those exact surveillance cameras he had recently installed. Authorities tracked down some of these so-called ham radio community haters, but they all had alibis and it was a bust. Authorities tracked down Henry's estranged wife, who was cooperative. While she was happy to be soon divorced, it didn't appear they had been fighting over anything significant and definitely didn't look like she wanted him dead. She still controlled some of the bills, and she confirmed that utility usage went down after May 24th. So authorities knew that Henry was likely murdered on or soon after May 24th. And then Henry's wife told authorities something else. Henry had a girlfriend. She was super young, half his age. When authorities asked Henry's sisters about this girlfriend, they were like, yeah, she's super young. The sisters didn't really think that the girlfriend could be involved in his murder, but, they thought it was strange because Henry was head over heels in love with her, and, she hadn't been around for very long. The new girlfriend was 27-year-old Ashlie Stapp. When investigators looked into Ashlie, one of the neighbors revealed that the last time they saw her in Henry's neighborhood was on the day the police showed up to search Henry's house. They knew it was her because she drove a beat-up blue Honda with damage to the front, so it was definitely her. Wait, that's weird. It was weird because investigators hadn't spoken to Ashlie, and it was even weirder because she had passed by her boyfriend's house, who was surrounded by cop cars, and didn't even bother to stop to ask what was happening, and Ashlie never even called his family. Nothing. So investigators do a little search for Ashlie on the internet, and the first thing that comes up is a picture of her in a Marine Corps uniform, and the caption reads, quote, First Lieutenant Curtis Krueger, Communications Officer, Combat Logistics Battalion 7, demonstrates how to apply camouflage paint on Ashlie Stapp during the unit's Jane Wayne Day aboard the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center, Twentynine Palms, California, May 10th, 2018, end quote. That's weird. For those of you wondering what Jane Wayne Day is, it's a day to give spouses a glimpse into the day-to-day lives of their active duty spouses through the Combat Convoy Simulator, a live fire range, and a combat fitness test. So investigators look further into Ashlie, and sure enough, she isn't a Marine, but she is dating, or at this point, engaged to a Marine by the name of First Lieutenant Krueger. They also learned that Ashlie likes to pop pills, and as soon as they learned this, they realized that Ashlie was probably with Henry Because remember, she's 27 and he's 54, and she's probably with him because of his oxy prescription. So before bringing Ashlie in, police need to know, could Ashlie really be involved in Henry's murder? They look into Ashlie and Curtis's phone records, and they determine that the two of them were in fact in the area of Henry's house when he was last seen alive. And that's when police get a warrant to wiretap Ashlie's phone. They want to listen in on her conversations, but initially, they were getting nothing. Then they pull a trick out of their sleeve. They visit Ashlie's brother. So they show him a picture of Ashlie and Henry together, and they ask the brother if he recognizes Henry, and he doesn't. He clearly recognizes his sister, and he says so. Authorities tell the brother that they are investigating a crime, and they ask if he thinks Ashlie might know anything about the crime. I'm not even sure that they actually tell him what the crime is. Unbeknownst to the brother, they are listening in on Ashlie's phone, and when they leave the brother's house, what does the brother do? He calls Ashlie, and he's like, hey, what's up with this dude Henry? The cops came by my house, yada, yada, yada. And Ashlie is like, well, that's weird. I don't know anything about nothing. But as soon as she hangs up with her brother, who do you think she calls? She immediately calls Curtis Krueger. And that's when they started chatting about good old Henry. While never completely implicating themselves, they start to wonder aloud during this conversation, how could anyone know? Curtis then said, no one would have seen me loading him into my truck because I pulled in way far back into the garage. Yikes. Then Curtis remembered the girl who passed by Henry's house while they were leaving and waved goodbye. But then, during another wiretap conversation, both Ashlie and Curtis start talking about Henry's security cameras. As they go down the list of times they could have been seen by witnesses, one of them wondered if there were cameras at the entrance of Joshua Tree National Park. Bingo! Authorities decide now is the time to bring Ashlie in for questioning. They ask her if she was involved in Henry's murder, and she denied. But when they let her in on the wiretap conversation, she immediately flipped. But initially, she never named Curtis. She just said, a man, and she never named him. When authorities are like, listen, Ashlie, we know you're talking about Curtis Krueger, she finally caved. According to her, Curtis was her boyfriend and he was upset about her sexual relationship with Henry, but she said she never thought Curtis would kill Henry. She said after Curtis killed Henry, they rolled him up in a blanket and drove him to Joshua Tree. She blamed the entire ordeal on the fact that her fiancé Curtis kept a tight tab on her via phone, meaning he was tracking her phone everywhere she went. When authorities brought First Lieutenant Curtis Krueger in for questioning, he immediately lawyered up. Curtis was arrested in late August 2018, but there was a little snag in the case. When investigators brought their evidence to the DA was like, listen, this is not enough evidence. And with the scant evidence, they were not prepared to file charges. The investigators were floored, jaws on the floor floored. But they needed more evidence. It was better that they let him go now and gather as much evidence as possible. It was a difficult thing to see, but within days of their arrest, Curtis was allowed to walk. It's not every day a military officer is arrested for a suspected murder, so as soon as he had been taken in by the authorities, NCIS and all the JAGs at Twentynine Palms, they knew. And when he was released, NCIS scooped him up and the JAGs worked with Marine leadership to put Curtis in pretrial confinement. Because while the civilians were not prepared to file charges, the Marines were ready to go. And all of this is in accordance with an episode of On the Case with Paula Zahn. I didn't read any news articles that actually indicated that Curtis was in military pretrial confinement, but that was what they said on the episode, so I'm just going to go with that, and it's possible that maybe he wasn't. Everything was kind of in limbo at this point. Henry's family was furious because even though Curtis was allegedly in pretrial confinement, they felt that his release from civilian confinement was a slap in the face, and they wondered if they would ever get justice for Henry. But then, one day, a new tip came in, a confession of sorts. Curtis Krueger was a special military breed, the enlisted officer type. He joined the Marines at the ripe age of 17 in 2005. He did his enlisted thing for a little bit, but after obtaining his 4-year college degree, he transitioned from enlisted to officer in 2015. Curtis was a man's man and a handsome one at that. He was a black belt in martial arts, and you could tell this dude loved the gym. I am sure Curtis was a ladies' man, but it was a woman he met at his cousin's house that kept his attention. Curtis had been couch surfing at his cousin's house on weekends while stationed at Twentynine Palms, and it was when his cousin was on vacation in Mexico that Curtis met the house sitter/dog sitter, a young woman named Ashlie Stapp. At the time, Ashlie was working at Jamba Juice. When Curtis told his cousin that Ashlie was cute, his cousin was like, listen, stay away from her. Curtis's cousin was looking out for him because she knew that Ashlie was a pill popper, abusing prescription medication as much as possible. You see, when Ashlie was 23 years old, she injured her hip. At the time, she had been prescribed Norco and Percocet, but by the time she was healed, she was hooked on the pain pills. Ashlie then began to buy the painkillers illegally online. By 2017, Ashlie was paying at least $600 a day. Yes, I said $600 a day on prescription medication. A court opinion that I read revealed that when Ashlie didn't have her own money for the pills, she would steal them from family. People would give her the pills with the promise she would repay them, or she would exchange sex for pills to fuel her addiction. And it was when Ashlie was looking for prescription medication on old, reliable Craigslist that she met 54-year-old Henry Stange. When Ashlie met Henry in person at his house for the first time, it was to exchange sex for oxycodone. By late 2017, Ashlie and Curtis began dating, but by that time, she had been seeing Henry for sex and drugs regularly. But she kept that part of her life a secret from Curtis. When she began to date Curtis, she would still see Henry once a month on the side. Ashlie was really living two different lives. To Curtis and his family and friends, Ashlie was his girlfriend. They even talked about marriage and life together. But when she was with Henry, Henry introduced Ashlie to his friends and family and even his estranged wife as his girlfriend. Soon after Curtis began to date Ashlie, he noticed something was off. But instead of asking or doing anything about it, he would just take notes on his phone about it. The first thing he noticed was that Ashlie drank a lot. And not just she drank a lot, but she drank and drove. And on one occasion, she drank to excess and then vanished, only to be found later passed out in her car in the desert. Wanting to help, Curtis asked Ashlie to share her phone location with him in case he ever needed to help her. Ashlie agreed. And it wasn't until January 2018 that Curtis learned that Henry Stange even existed. During a family gathering while together, Ashlie looked at her phone. I guess she was like reading an email or something, and she became very upset. She proceeded to throw the phone to the ground and stomp on it and then walked off. Confused, Curtis picked up the phone and saw the name Henry. It was an email from him. Curtis sent Henry an email telling him to leave Ashlie alone or else. And well, a few days later, when Curtis went to look for Ashlie's location, he noticed that her location had been turned off, likely because her phone was off. And that's when the spidey senses started going off. He remembered the Henry character, from the email, and he was like, oh my gosh, she's cheating on me with this guy named Henry. By this point, Curtis and Ashlie appeared to be squatting in some abandoned house near Joshua Tree. One day, Curtis found out about Ashlie's drug addiction. He also went through her phone and learned more about Henry, and he was very upset. One day after work, Curtis got home and Ashlie wasn't there. When he checked her location was off. I imagine that Curtis stayed by that phone waiting for her location to be turned back on. And when it did in Murrieta, he beelined there, where he found her at a gas station. Curtis then confronted Ashlie about Henry, and that's when Ashlie made up an elaborate lie. She cried and told Curtis that Henry had raped her. According to Ashlie, Curtis then forced her to reveal Henry's address, and he drove to Henry's house, grabbed a hammer from his car, and broke into Henry's home where he beat him to a pulp, practically leaving him for dead. Curtis told Ashlie he did a bad thing when he got into the truck, but she had no clue what happened in the house. The following day, Ashlie was worried about Henry, or maybe she just wanted to get some more drugs, but she went to Henry's house where Henry revealed he had been attacked. He had suffered a serious concussion and was bleeding from his ear. But Ashlie didn't reveal the attacker's name, nor that she knew him. Meanwhile, Curtis became more and more paranoid about Ashlie. It's almost like he became obsessed with knowing her every move. He stalked her phone, took screenshots of her phone, sent them to himself, responded to emails and messages from her phone, questioned why she kept turning off her locations. He was driving himself crazy. He wrote notes about his suspicions on his phone, like, dude, really, you need a life and a new girlfriend. But wait, in true military fashion, despite all these red flags, in April of 2018, guess what Curtis did? Some of you probably guessed it. Curtis proposed to Ashlie and she said yes. But then on May 23rd, Ashlie got an email from Henry. He had gotten his hands on some oxy and he invited her for an oxy party. Ashlie could not pass on this opportunity. Engaged or not, she needed to get her fix.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
May 24th was this big military family day at Twentynine Palms. So on that day, while Curtis was on base at work, Ashlie took the opportunity to send him a message to let him know she was going to her mom's house to pick something up. I believe it was like suitcases or something. Curtis was sus, so he watched Ashlie's location as she drove from their place to her mom's place, but then the location stopped moving. It just kind of stayed idle at her mom's house. By noon that day, the family day activities started at Twentynine Palms, and Ashlie, who promised to be there, was nowhere to be found. WTF, thought Curtis. So Curtis called Ashlie's mom, and the mom was like, bro, I'm out of town. I don't know where my daughter is. Now, Curtis's blood began to boil. Curtis stayed at the family event for like a hot minute, but then he told his boss that he had to go because he had a family event. He lied and said he suspected his fiancée was suicidal, and now that he couldn't get a hold of her, he was very worried. The boss was like, do what you gotta do, and with that, Curtis left. As he exited the base, Curtis saw Ashlie's location still at her mom's house. Realizing it would take him over 90 minutes to get there, he called the cops to conduct a welfare check. Now, this part of the story is confusing because maybe he did believe that Ashlie could hurt herself, or maybe he was setting up his alibi with his boss. Regardless, cops went out to Ashlie's mother's house in Canyon Lake and never found Ashlie. Meanwhile, Curtis was probably racing to get to the house. So this is where things get even crazier. Curtis arrived at Ashlie's mom's house. No one was home. Ashlie's car wasn't there, and he starts to call her off the hook. And then Curtis finds Ashlie's phone just chilling on the lawn, like just laying there. It appeared that Ashlie had intentionally left her phone there to throw Curtis off because she knew that he was like basically stalking her. And sadly, Curtis knew exactly where Ashlie was, at Henry's house. So Curtis drove to Henry's house, and when he got there, he saw Ashlie's car parked right outside. Unbeknownst to Curtis, although he had probably already imagined it, Henry and Ashlie had gotten high on oxy, had sex, and had just wrapped things up. Ashlie was in the bathroom. Henry was in the garage in his boxers or something like that with the garage door open. He was playing some music when all of a sudden Curtis attacked Henry. Henry fought back like hell. Ashlie heard a commotion, and when she got to the garage, Henry was practically dead and there was blood everywhere. Curtis quick told Ashlie to get in her car, and they drove off in separate cars and met up at Ashlie's mom's house. That's where they got together and brainstormed. They realized that Henry had cameras and there was evidence to get rid of. So with that in mind, they returned in Curtis's car to Henry's house. They removed all the security cameras. They took Henry's cell phone. They took his computer, and they tried to clean up the scene as much as possible. Then they packed up Henry's body in a blanket and put him in Curtis's truck. Before leaving, of course, Ashlie snagged all of the leftover oxy on the way out because, well, that's what addicts do. They then drove to Joshua Tree, where they drove around aimlessly looking for the perfect dumping grounds. So you're probably wondering how Curtis and Ashlie eventually got caught. Well, it had something to do with the January 2018 hammer attack. Unbeknownst to Henry Stange, the January 2018 hammer attack had taken place at the hands of his lover's boyfriend. But Henry had thought all along it was a ham radio community rival. Well, it was when Curtis was in military pretrial confinement and civilian investigators were looking for more evidence that they got the tip they needed. Someone called authorities to reveal that Curtis had confessed to the January 2018 hammer attack on Henry. This person also revealed that Curtis had left Henry for dead and was shocked that he survived. And in revealing the attack story, Curtis also told this person that during the hammer attack, the hammer was disformed, like it was bent. When asked what he did with the hammer, Curtis said he disposed of it in the desert. Upon obtaining this new information, or this tip, authorities were prepared to talk to Ashlie, and this time they were prepared to offer her a deal. When they offered her that sweet deal, of course, she took it. And that's when she confessed to being in the car during the January 2018 attack. She also confessed to being with Curtis when he disposed of the hammer. So they were freaking out. They asked her to tell them the general area where Curtis could have ditched the hammer. And she told them she was kind of like here in this general area. So authorities took up quite the task. And when I say authorities, I believe it was NCIS. At least that's who was credited with taking on the daunting task of searching for the hammer. So NCIS took to searching for the hammer in the desert, and wouldn't you know it, they found it. With this new evidence about the January 2018 attack, combined with the wiretap information and the cooperation of Ashlie Stapp, civilian authorities took Curtis from the Marines on December 13th, 2018, and charged him not only with murder, but with the January 2018 assault on Henry Stange. He was held on a $1 million bond. The trial against Curtis Krueger got underway in August of 2020, but by this point, his once fiancée had already had her day in court following her plea deal. You see, in 2019, Ashlie Stapp, whose first name appears to actually be Nicole, so it's either like Nicole Ashlie Stapp or Ashlie Nicole Stapp, well, she pled guilty to accessory after the fact, and she was sentenced to 10 months in jail and 3 years probation for her part in Henry's death. At the trial, all the evidence that I've already mentioned was presented, and when it was the defense's turn to present evidence, should they please, First Lieutenant Curtis Krueger took the stand. By this point, I don't think he was a first lieutenant anymore because he had probably been discharged from the Marines. I am sure that Curtis Krueger was counting on his good looks to help him out in court. On the stand, according to a recap and an appellate opinion, Curtis claimed that the January attack was in self-defense or in defense of another. Specifically, Curtis said that he had accompanied Ashlie to Henry's house to retrieve some items. Curtis claimed that as Ashlie was walking through the house, Henry got in her way to stop her and Curtis jumped in to defend her. He did acknowledge that a hammer attack was a little on the excessive side. As it pertains to the day of the murder, Curtis, on the stand, admitted that he was genuinely concerned with Ashlie's well-being, as the day prior she had jumped in front of traffic and almost got struck by a truck when she was upset. During the Marine Corps Family Day event, when Curtis tried to reach Ashlie, she was not responding to his text messages, which caused him concern. When he got to her mother's house and found her cell phone, he panicked and went straight to the house where Ashlie had previously claimed she had been raped. When Curtis saw Ashley's car in front of Henry's house, he figured she was just cheating on him and that he would just break up with her. But just then, Henry saw Curtis and gestured at him to come in from the garage. When Curtis asked about Ashlie, Henry allegedly said she wasn't there. That's when Curtis claimed that Henry came at him with a knife. Curtis, of course, a Marine and strong as hell, disarmed Henry and stabbed him in the neck as they scuffled to the floor. Eventually, after the brutal knockdown brawl, Henry was on the floor as Curtis got free. That's when Curtis claimed that Henry grabbed his leg, which is why Curtis had to stomp on Henry's head to get free from him. But wait, on the stand, Curtis said that after the quote-unquote fight, he ran inside the house, expecting to find Ashlie inside the house all tied up like she had been kidnapped. But instead, he found her in the bathroom. And let's be honest, she was probably in the bathroom stealing all of Henry's medication. Curtis then told Ashlie they needed to go before Henry came after them. The couple later discussed calling the ambulance, but it was Ashley's idea to bury the body instead. Oh boy, I am sure that everyone in the courtroom was shocked after hearing his testimony. But the jury did not buy Curtis's story. Well, at least not completely. At the end of the day, they found Curtis guilty of second-degree murder and the January assault. In mid-October, Curtis got to stand before the judge for sentencing. During sentencing, Curtis apologized for causing so much pain, but he claimed he didn't kill out of jealousy, but in an effort to save Ashlie from the man who was feeding her drugs and who had previously assaulted her. At the end of the day, Curtis did admit that he, quote, foolishly took Henry for a rapist and a predator, but the man who died was a father, end quote. But the judge was not happy with Curtis, still trying to skirt justice. The presiding judge said, quote, Mr. Krueger intentionally took the life of another individual with malice aforethought in a brutal fashion. It wasn't because he was under the mistaken impression that his girlfriend was the victim of rape. It was because he was enraged that his girlfriend was intimately involved with another man, end quote. With that, Curtis was sentenced to 3 years for the assault, followed by 15 years to life for Henry's murder. The sentences are to be served back to back. In wrapping up this episode, I wanted to bring you a resource if you or someone you knew was suffering from a prescription drug addiction. I reached out to my dear friend Leah D from Lease to These podcasts, and she gave me a few that I'm going to be adding to my show notes. They're going to be websites. For those of you who have TRICARE or other medical insurance, the best way to get help is to be truthful with your medical provider. It's also helpful to understand that it is a process, but with the proper care and support, overcoming addiction is possible and there is hope. My heart really goes out to Henry Stange from this episode because he was likely also overcoming an addiction with his pain and disability. Ashlie Stapp wasn't a saint, but she was clearly also battling her addiction problems. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. If you're interested in seeing pictures and learning more about this case, make sure you check out that episode of On the Case with Paula Zahn. Additional resources used to put this episode together include an appellate court opinion from the Superior Court of Riverside County and articles found in the Marine Corps Times, Desert Sun, The Press Enterprise, NBC San Diego, and Heavy.com. All right, be sure that you're following me on YouTube at Mama Margot. Military Murder is a Mama Margot production. The theme music was created by Ty-Ops. Until next time, remember, you never really know what someone is capable of, so remain vigilant always. You have a fabulous week, and I'll keep digging to bring you another military murder story next time.
Mama's working on her podcast. I don't want to.